welcome back to Devotions from History. On May 27th of 1564, a 55-year-old man lay dying. He had driven his body to its limits. When he found that he couldn't walk the 100 or so yards to church, he demanded that they carry his chair over so he could still preach. When the doctor forbade him to go outside, he simply had everyone come into his bedroom, and he taught them from there. When they said to him, "You really need to rest," his reply was, "What? Would you want the Lord to find me idle when he comes for me?" But it was on this day that scholar, author, and father of the Reformed faith, John Calvin's body finally gave out, but his influence has not. His magnum opus, the Institutes of the Christian Religion, which, by the way, when he first published it, had only 6 chapters. As he kept adding to it, it finally ended up with 79. That Institute of the Christian Religion has founded a theological framework that has influenced every church with the name Presbyterian, Reformed, and even many Baptist churches for the last 500 years. Calvin has been credited or blamed, depending on your view, with the rise of capitalism, democracy, and individualism. But one of the best things I think that Calvin did for us was that he gave the church a better understanding of the sovereignty of God and the keeping power of God's grace, what he called the indefectibility of grace. You have to remember that in the medieval church, people lived constantly with an anxious thought that if they were not good enough, no matter what their relationship was with Christ, that they would not make it into heaven. There was a consistent anxiousness about their security of their salvation. And it was Calvin who argued that once you understand that you are part of God's elect, that there is nothing that will remove you from that salvation. He gave us an understanding of what is now called eternal security or perseverance of the saints. Now, wherever you fall on the line of eternal security, we have to give some thanks to Calvin because he delivered generations of Christians from what has been termed eternal insecurity. And we realize that we don't need to be constantly anxious or doubting our salvation because the fact is, not just according to Calvin, but biblically, we know that the God who is sovereign and has enough grace to save us is also able to keep us. The scripture tells us that to him who is able to keep us from falling and present us unstained at his glorious throne, he is worthy of glory and majesty and power. I'm thankful that God has given us men like John Calvin, who, while you may not agree with everything he said, sure has had a lot to teach the church in the 500 years since his death. I'll see you tomorrow on Devotions from History.